Hello, I'm Chanaye Jackson, and this is the Idea to Empire podcast. Thank you for joining today. Today, we're going to be speaking to Ken Caputo. He is the founder of Momentum Learning Systems. Ken, as a business owner, teacher, and entrepreneur, he has been creating and implementing unique ways to positively impact communities for over 30 years. Ken has helped design and launch multiple businesses, beginning as a martial arts school owner, then going on to create community-based businesses like Quester's Way, a 16,000 square foot multidimensional family center, a full-service fitness center, a community art gallery, and his coaching and consulting company. Ken now works with a growing number of businesses, teachers, coaches, and entrepreneurs to help them energize their unique contributions and relationships with their teams through his online academy. I'm so glad that you'll be able to meet Ken today. I'm Chanaye Jackson, and let's get into speaking with Ken Caputo. Hi, Ken. How are you?
I am doing amazing. How are you?
I'm good. Ken Caputo, welcome to the Idea to Empire podcast. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm ready for this conversation. You've actually helped me a lot with creating like a natural feel good sort of referral system. And you might touch on that a little bit, but thank you for helping me. And so that's part of the reason why I wanted to bring you on and have our conversation today. I gave everybody your bio, so they know that little tiny bit. But tell them more about you. Tell them your origin story. How'd you get here?
Well, it's like most people, it's a winding one. But the short version of it is I wandered through life, found my way into college, not really sure what I was doing with myself. I think that's very common for a lot of entrepreneurial-minded people. Normal structures we don't seem to fit in them very well. So I was very interested in the idea of working with people, helping people, teaching people, and just was really struggling with the way to do that, especially when it came to fitting into someone else's organizing principles. I'm not very good at being told what to do unless it makes sense. You know, there's a reason for doing it. So it led me to actually choosing to become a martial arts teacher for a living. And my goal with that was really to work with people sort of on three levels. One was to be an ally for people and for families, and to really help provide them with tools that would allow them to succeed in life. And martial arts seemed like a really unique way to do it because there's physical part to it, which I love moving my body. There's a tremendous amount of spiritual, kind of not religious, but spiritual. You learn how to really connect to yourself and to others in meaningful ways. You'll learn a lot about yourself, all that kind of stuff. And kids were getting, this is in the early 90s, kids were swarming into martial arts schools because of things like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So, and I walked into the dojo. I was taking classes for myself, and there are all these sweaty, red-faced, smiling kids just being amazing. And I was thinking, okay, this is something that I could do. So I took an opportunity to take over a school that was struggling. They were thinking about shutting it down, turned it around, had it profitable in about 3 months, and then just never left. So, so over the course of the next 15 to 20 years, I built it up into a 300 student school, kids from 3 years old to adults into their 70s and everywhere in between training. And through that process of being a family ally, we really started understanding how a business could become a resource for the community. And we got very involved in the school systems, very involved with local businesses, just integrated and wove ourselves into the fabric of the community. And that's where things like that referral marketing system came from, because it was just this whole idea of just create value, do the best you can to serve your community through your unique expertise, your unique contribution, and then people will like that, and the business kind of flows back to you in the other direction from that. So then the third part of it was I really started studying learning a lot, because we were dealing with such a diverse demographic, young children, people from all walks of life, and having a class where I'd have 30 students on the mats all at the same time all needing to learn things, but having different ways that they needed to do that. So I started studying 21st century learning and education and basically testing all of those principles through almost 2 decades.
Yeah.
And
Real time.
yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I mean,
Right
it was, yeah. You want feedback? Teach a 5-year-old. They will be brutally honest, and you will know if what you're doing is working or not right away. And parents will not hold back either, when you're working with their children and with them for that matter. So it was a great environment to really test things and find out in practical terms what worked and what didn't. So that led to the development of something called the momentum learning system, which was the concept behind it was create a natural teaching method that works with the person's brain the way their brain likes to work. And the idea is that learning should get easier. The hardest part is when you're learning something new. Once you've learned how to learn it, yes, there can be more effort as it gets more sophisticated, but you should gain momentum with the process. So we geared around that, started teaching that to school systems, to teachers, to students, to parents. They were having success with it. And that led to us opening a multidimensional family center in 2016 called Quester's Way. And we take anyone that had a skill. They could know breakdancing, they could know how to play chess, cooking, it didn't matter. And we teach them how to teach it by giving them this momentum learning methodology that we developed. And pretty soon we had 150 classes a week going for all ages. And it was everything from movement-based stuff like gymnastics and ballet to project-based things like creative writing and painting to game-based play like chess, Dungeons and Dragons, whatever we could think of that someone wanted to learn. If we found someone who was interested in it, we teach them how to teach it. So, yeah.
Oh, I love that. Like we teach them how to teach it and then they go teach it. Like that's
Yeah. And
cool.
and the interesting thing is what we discovered through the years, and this was in our students, this is also working with staff. If you teach someone how they learn best, now they lose the fear of new things. They're willing to try new things because they have a process that they can trust. So it's like that whole, teach them how to fish type thing.
Right.
So it was that kind of environment. And we've always thought about integration and holistic approach to business. So our family center had all of these different classes. It had a health eating cafe, so people could share meals and kids could learn that eating healthy can actually be fun. It had a giant indoor park, and we would teach kids, give them a place where they could play in an unstructured way, but also have positive social interactions. So it gave them a place where they could really learn and grow together as a family. And that was focused right up until the pandemic hit, when all the brick and mortar stuff kind of shut down. Our martial arts school went virtual. And from there, we started focusing on working with entrepreneurs, and through our Momentum Learning consulting company, helping them figure out how to optimize their contributions in a way where they could scale it in a way that made sense to them, and they could build a lasting legacy. So over time, whatever their business venture was could potentially outlast them, or they could sell it or whatever they needed to.
Whatever
So,
the next step was.
yeah. So we started focusing on that, and it's just been really cool over the last couple of years, meeting people all around the world that are doing amazing things, and they just need a little bit of like banks to the river, so that they can do this without exhausting themselves or feeling like, they got to run into the walls before they find the doors. So we're kind of helping with that.
Love it. So tell us more about the Momentum Learning System. Like what's in it and how do you work with entrepreneurs, business owners to implement something like this?
So there's 2 parts to it. So the actual system is designed to take whatever content they have, whatever information needs to be transferable, and we give it a structure, and it's loose. It's not like a system where they have to do things a specific way. Sure. It's kind of got 4 blocks that they organize the flow of their information through. And the main thing is it shifts the paradigm from teacher-centric to learner-centric. So you're thinking about the information the way it's received instead of the way you deliver it. And a lot of times it doesn't, like, to me, everyone's a teacher. If you're a manager, if you're a good manager, you're a teacher. You know, if you're an employee, teach your manager how you best succeed as an employee. So there's always this opportunity. And the Momentum Learning System gave us a way to give everyone a common language so that they could structure and organize things in a way that everybody could understand and implement. And, you know, that was a big part for us in 2019, right before everything kind of closed down. We were running 4 businesses simultaneously with about 100 employees, and they could all interact effectively. They weren't siloed. They all shared a similar language and understanding of how things were structured that allowed us to have a lot of moving parts that could interact effectively with each other.
And so, you could run your businesses at the same time.
Yeah. And really, we didn't run them. We tended to them, you know, and we gave them the space to make intelligent decisions and, you know, feel empowered. And when they messed up, there was a process in place where we could diagnose that. So that was the other thing. You know, it's like, okay, we run it through this kind of formula. If there's a breakdown, let's look at it through that formula and identify the breakdown so we can work together to fix it. So that was a big part of what it was. And then the other thing that happened out of this is we get really good at running businesses where people liked working in them. They looked forward to coming to work. They'd show up on their day off. So the other half of this was working with organizations and groups. And we had kind of this 3-part flywheel where first we give them interactive workshops and presentations that would strengthen their understanding of themselves and each other in some element of team building, communication, project management, whatever it was. When you have that understanding, that leads to a deepening of connection. There's trust that's built because now you're seeing the person for who they are, not what they can or can't do. You know, you're just seeing those capabilities and how they match up against your own. And when you do that, it kind of unlocks this level of personal and professional evolution that helps the business flourish and grow. So we would go into organizations and we would do that. We would just do fun, interactive presentations that would give people a little bit of a different way of viewing the way they work with each other and the way they work best, where their gaps are, that kind of thing, so that they could kind of complement each other and leverage that into greater success and more fun. So just work should be fulfilling. You know, It can be hard. It can be stressful at times, but it should still feel good that you're doing it. So
you should be looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Tell me more about, you had a very specific word that I think more people would be curious about. You said you tended to your businesses. So how did you build a culture like that, where everyone sort of seems like they have a version of ownership in the success of the way the business is run and how its own success, period?
So there's 3 parts to it. And the first part is the big mistake I made was I wasn't clear in communicating who would flourish in our unique business environment. And every business environment is unique. And especially when you're desperate for help, you're thinking about how you can get them to fit. And basically the story was, so I ran this martial arts school. It's still going strong. It's been there for 30 years. The director, I barely teach there anymore. I'm kind of I'm the board chair, and I basically consult, but you know, I'm onto other projects. So the guy that's currently running it started learning from me when he was 5 years old. Now he's in his 30s and married and wonderful guy.
It makes you feel a little old, I'm sure.
No, it's funny. And it's just, So, and he's the 5th generation of leadership to run this school. And I taught him as a child, but I didn't teach him to run the school. He was taught by someone who was taught by someone who was taught by me. So it was that kind of environment where, you know, but they would grow up in the school. So you really didn't have job interviews, right? So I opened Quester's Way and I had to interview and hire 52 people. And I didn't it was this amazing center. Everybody was so excited to be a part of it. I interviewed over 200 people in a mall, sitting on a bench outside of the facility while it was being built, and just picked people I thought would be good. And by the end of the first year, 80% of them were gone. I failed them, and I'm like, and they were good people. There's nothing wrong with them. What was wrong was I didn't go through the process of helping them understand not what the business was, but what working in this business would look like. So, for example, I had some people that needed a lot of structure. And this was a startup. There's no structure. There's chaos. But I wasn't clear on that. And we also were never going to, we weren't interested in like an hierarchy and, and kind of like these structured positions from top to bottom. It was more free flowing than that. Some people loved that. Some people were incredibly stressed by that because they didn't know who they were responsible for or who was responsible for them. So we designed this whole hiring process called a fitting room around the idea of, you see the shirt on the rack, it can look great on the rack, but then you try it on and it looks terrible on you. Or it looks like a blob on the rack and you put it on, you're like, wow, this looks pretty good. So we had to give people a way that we could try each other on in advance of making a decision to hire them. So a lot of it was that. That's the long way around. The first part was we had to get super clear on our value and the way that we delivered that value and the way that we worked together that allowed the business to flourish and succeed. And then we all tended to that. And, we actively nurtured that. We had language we committed to. No one was a customer. Everyone was a guest. That was the language we'd use. If someone came in, you didn't say, "Can I help you?" You said, "Welcome." And it was very specific that we used that. And we all agreed to it, not because you were told. We knew why. Everyone knew why. They all knew that there were 3 priorities that you always tended to. The values of the business was number 1, foster meaningful human connection. Give people an opportunity to connect to each other. Second thing is create empowered learning opportunities. And the third is best day ever. That's what we called our center. It's just give them the joy of the present moment. Let all the complexities be on the back end where they don't see it. So everyone was clear on that. And they demonstrated from top to bottom through our actions, this is what we're committed to. And if we fall short on that, we hold each other accountable. So I think a lot of businesses, it's hard to tend to your business if you don't know the difference between the flowers and the weeds, So, yeah.
That's not a tough statement right there. Okay.
Yeah. So that was step 1. And then there's a martial arts principle that just be cautious about adding energy to a system that's not in balance. And a lot of businesses make that mistake. They don't have that clarity, and then they try to expand their impact or their scale or whatever it is. So now you throw a lot of energy, but then all the things that were being masked that were wrong when there were less moving parts, they all show up. And now you're trying to fix the bike while you're riding it, which on some level we're always doing anyway, but that can get messy pretty soon. So create some semblance of balance that you can tend to. Now you start adding energy and you can test it in a gentler way and stay ahead of most of the disasters, hopefully.
Many of the disasters. What I hear you talking about, though, is you're talking about creating a culture around the values, the vision of the entire business, right? Like we think that I feel like vision and values are, everybody says them, but nobody knows what they mean. And then even less so how to implement them in the way that is thought of daily, regularly, right? Yep. And what sort of actions go and perpetuate the vision and values that you've recorded on paper, put on your website, put in the handbook, blah, blah, blah. I think about some of my previous corporate positions where the only time I really saw the values or even the vision was when I was going through my performance review and I was like, oh, well, I hope I did those.
Yeah. Yeah, that is very common. And I remember hearing an interview with someone who's doing research on this, and the majority of, and I've had this personally working with organizations, the executive team is very clear on the values, and they also believe that everyone else is as well. And that's not true.
That's
But
not
it's
true.
not something that they tend to. It's not proactive. So they're not only exemplifying, but talking about it, referencing that in the way business is working, the decisions that are made, especially the things that go wrong. It's like, well, what went wrong and how do we resolve this as it relates to the values that we say we hold? And if you're not putting those two things together, how do people really have an environment where they learn that it is important? They're just like you said, they're words on the wall. They're not, it's someone checked the box. In a well-meaning way, they checked a box because that's what you're supposed to do. And you have your vision statement and your purpose statement and your mission statement, and you have whatever else you have, and then it's like, okay, I did it. It's done. It's like a handbook. We didn't want a handbook. We had a living document. Like
Yeah.
Zappos did that. The employees created the handbook, through years. And that's a different energy to bring to it. So because you're bringing a different energy to it and you're committed to it through your actions, people respond differently. And that's how you start to foster that kind of culture, and you can't hold it too tight either. It's always interesting to me how it expresses itself because you're never really sure, but you can be clear on your values and the way you want to work together, and that will continue to attract the right people and repel people that just, there's nothing wrong with them. It's just not an environment that they can flourish in.
I really like that because I really feel like your values, especially, are, I mean, your vision too, but your values very, very specifically they should be living. Like the way in which the way that you put them into your business should be done every day in every interaction, regardless of whether you're talking to an employee or to a customer or a client or, a guest, which I think is a very fun, is a really fun thing for people. Like what would happen if your value was, we provide a welcoming environment regardless of race, creed, color, right? And so the welcoming is saying welcome, right? Like I like that,
Well, and the interesting thing about it is when you think about it that way, you're open to variations in how that's going to be expressed. So when we focused on meaningful human connection, what that meant evolved and changed as the community evolved and changed because they're organic. They're not, the people that are coming to you in 1995 are different from the people coming to you in 2005. There's some carryover, but they've changed. So who they are, the things that matter to them change. So now you're asking the question, all right, it doesn't matter what meaningful human connection means to me. What matters is what means to them. I work for them. They're not paying me. I'm earning, the right to stay in business through, caring for the people that are investing time, energy, and attention into my business. So you can look at the value, but then you're constantly asking questions, how do I serve them through this lens? What do they need now? What changed?
I love this thought too, that your business really only grows through you being cognizant that you're not the business. You're, like your people who you have doing all the things, right? They are the business. Sure, you have a distinct, so of course, everybody has a role. And right. And sometimes your role is not bringing people in the door. Sometimes that's somebody else's. So treating people correctly. I'm going to use correctly because there's a way to treat people badly and there's a way to treat people poorly, but there's another way to treat people correctly. Treating people correctly will provide so many more opportunities for you to generally, I would say, even grow your business well past what you may have even thought.
Yeah, and it's interesting because one of the keys to that we found was the highest skill we could teach wasn't to lead, it was to support someone who is leading.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like an art in and of itself. So now you're creating an environment where people are like, okay, there's this Zen principle of no trace, and it's
Mm-hmm.
when you influence something without anyone ever knowing you were there, right? So it'd be funny because I'd constantly have people, I'm wandering through the center and people would say, do you work here? And someone who no one was allowed to call me a boss. I hated that term.
Sure.
I was just Ken. But a lot of times I'm like recharging the coffee, cause we ran out and everybody in the cafe is busy, or I'm cleaning up the park. I'm just making sure that everyone else can be awesome at their job, and as best I could going unrecognized. My
Mm-hmm.
role was to hold everything together and moving in the right direction. So I didn't need to draw attention to myself for the individual interactions. I
Sure.
needed to position other people so they could stay focused on that.
Yeah.
And what I found is the most brilliant, wise, compelling leaders that I've met in all my years, that's what they do. They're incredible at supporting other people growing into and thriving in roles that fit them. And then their role becomes the glue that supports everybody else's roles, kind of. So it's a cool thing when you see it happen.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than having a boss who goes and like disrupts the day, where it's like, he's coming, she's coming,
Yeah,
there's nothing worse than that, because then you're like, what am I doing here if I have to have this level of deference for some, like, yes, respect is one thing, deference is another. And so if I have to have
yeah,
a level of deference to this person, like, why are you messing up my day? And then if you're doing that, then why aren't you just doing the job that you're putting me behind? I'm not
right.
focusing on the reason why you hired me. So I've had a couple of jobs like that. Speaking from
Yeah,
experience.
yeah, and a lot of times they feel if they're unclear on what their role is, like they don't feel very very skillful in that. They're just trying to feel relevant, so they end up being disrupted because they just need to feel like their role is justified. So,
Sure.
and it's interesting. I've worked with people like that, and as they get clearer, they get much easier to work with because now they have like they understand better how they can be of value, and with a few exceptions, most people, they do want to add value, they want to contribute in some way, and if that is their interest, the it all comes back to that clarity. The more clarity they get in how they can do that, what their role is, the less resistance that's created in the dynamic of the company's culture. So,
Yeah.
and then there's a few that just they just want to be the genius with 1,000 helpers, and they're
Yeah.
not, there's not much you can do to help
That,
them.
that's a choice too. So,
It is
uh,
a choice.
so as we're wrapping up, I always like to ask people, like, what's a key thought or a key phrase that the audience listening, the audience watching should keep in mind from our conversation today? What's important? Like, really, really important here.
Leave the world better than you found it. Just, and that substitute world in for whatever business interaction relationship. If you look around you and you think, okay, it's this way, and in some way I can just, when I remove myself from it, leave the room, leave the conversation, leave for the day, whatever it is, it's a little better than it was when I came in. It just shifts the entire perspective of how you move through the world. And I'll tell you this, just if you're thinking entrepreneurially and that's your mindset, you will solve incredible problems. You will come up with amazing solutions that no one thought of because you're just thinking, and it doesn't have to be a lot better. It doesn't have to be visionary or groundbreaking. I mean, there's a saying we would use: rhythm and balance predict success, frequency makes for mastery. And with the idea being that just do the little things each day and tend to it in a positive way, and things will work out.
Things will work out. I think that's
Yeah.
like, I hear if you remove your ego, then it's easier to leave things better than you found it. So
I remember Dennis Waitley. Oh, sorry. Dennis Waitley wrote Psychology of Winning. He used to say, plant a shade tree under which you'll never sit. And I always liked that expression.
I like that too. Psychology of Waiting, you said, yes?
Psychology of Winning by Dennis Waitley. He wrote it years ago, probably in the early 90s. And he talks about the 10 traits of a winner. And it's cool stuff. He worked with Olympic athletes and astronauts and stuff. And a lot of them, like, they'd win the gold medal and then they'd get depressed. It's like, that was the pinnacle of their life. What do you do now? Yeah. So talk about ego and identity. It had been so broiled up in that, and now it's done. What happens next? Who are you now? And how do you change that so that you continue to live in a meaningful way? So
Mr. Caputo, Ken Caputo, you are fantastic. Thank you for joining us. Tell everybody how they can find you. What's your offer? What can they expect from you? Where can they connect?
So probably the best thing would be to just go to momentumlearning.info and join our mailing list. We send out an inspirational, motivational, informational type email once a week. Just to kind of give you some things to help you just get that little extra injection of clarity or focus you may need to continue doing the work that you do. And through there, we talk about all the other things. Like our main thing we're focusing right now is an online learning university. It's called the TIE Academy, TIE for the Integrated Entrepreneur. And all the things that we've learned to flourish as humans and in business over the last 30 years, we're building into this. So it's online lessons weekly, followed by office hours where people get to have these kind of conversations with me every week about the work that they're doing. But yeah, if you go to our website, that's the easiest way. Just join the email list and you can find out about all the things that we're up to.
Ken, you're fabulous. Everything will be, all of the things he mentioned, including the books, will be in the show notes, in the description. Thank you for having this conversation with me. You're fabulous. I told everybody about you first, and I think you stayed fabulous. And this conversation was so cool about creating a different culture that is tended to, not run.
Don't plant a seed and yell at it to grow. It won't work out very well. Give it some sunlight, water it, don't step on it, just be patient. You can talk to it if you want.
Right. Maybe add a little bit of fertilizer, some nutrients.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I love this. Yeah, this was awesome. And I really appreciate you coming onto the podcast, and everyone listening, everybody watching. This is Ken Caputo. Follow him. He's amazing. I'm on his email list. Do the thing. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.